Hey, welcome back to Requip Ministries. Again, so glad that you're here with us. We've been going through discipleship. We've just sort of been re-looking at it. That's why we've been calling it Renew Discipleship. We've just saying, hey, we're going to pause for a moment and just stop thinking about all the things we've been taught about discipleship, and then just go back to the Bible and what does God actually say? What is Jesus' intent for the church with discipleship? And we've been going through a lot of that. And hey, before I go any further, I just want to encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to this podcast. It really helps us out. It helps you get the content faster, but it also helps us be more visible to more and more people because it puts us higher up in the rankings, especially with Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening from. And I just want to go back through quickly some of the principles we've been talking about through the last few weeks of discipleship. And we've kind of formulated some discipleship principles. We know this isn't all encompassing. There's probably some more you could add, but I don't think you could take them away. But there's a few important ones, and I've so far come together with 4 of them. The first one is discipleship has to be intentional. Like we've kind of come to agree that discipleship doesn't just occur organically. It doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It seemed like Jesus was very intentional with his disciples. And then the next point is that discipleship is always relational in nature. It's not so much of like you're learning in a classroom only, but it's more that hands-on and relational. There was certainly learning involved, which we talked about last podcast, but there was a lot of that. The relational side was so important with discipleship. The third thing is it has to be transformational. And you look at where the disciples started to where they ended up, where they're going out and then replicating themselves, creating more disciples, that those disciples can also make other disciples. So it has to be transformational. And the last principle is it has to be measurable in some way. And one of the things we talked about a little bit was it has to be collective and also individual in nature. And that's one of the things I really wanted to hammer down on. And I have a guest to help me talk about this. We're going to be talking about how do you measure health of a local church? And we see how much this really involves discipleship, because really the mission of the church is making disciples and discipling them. So we think if we could measure the church's health, what numbers are we looking at? What is this is the sort of fruit of discipleship. And so without further ado, I have Pastor Ben Klock from LifePoint in Culpeper, and just so glad for his relationship with me and helping me out so many times. So I just want to welcome him to the podcast. And Ben, if you would, I'd like you to go ahead and, introduce yourself to anybody that's listening with that doesn't know you yet, and just so they can get to know you from the Requip Ministries, the audience that we have, and just want to give you that opportunity. So.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. My name's Ben. I'm the campus pastor of our Culpeper location. So LifePoint Church is a multi-site church, 6 locations across the state of Virginia. And, we exist to reach people far from God so they could become fully alive in Christ. And I get the honor and the privilege to serve at one of our locations as a campus pastor, which means I don't have to preach. I get to do the fun stuff. I get to invest in people, spend time with people, focus on the care of people. And that's basically my job. It's just to love people and help them to grow and to take next steps in their faith. I also get the honor to oversee all of our campuses and campus pastors and campus staff. Married, my wife and I, we have 6 boys. And so we are busy. There's always a lot going on at our house.
I'm sure.
And so, yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, LifePoint, great church. Just want to say awesome church. And, the way that you guys have been able to do with your leadership, there's so much we could talk about with, how great you guys do with leadership and raising up leaders. It's an awesome thing I think a lot of churches can learn from. But specifically, I wanted to talk to you about how do you measure health? Because I like the way you put it. You're not you're not focusing so much on crafting messages. You're all your time is dedicated to, your campus, the local church, and kind of fostering that and helping that. And, LifePoint's been able to be a healthy church in many multiple locations. And, but of course you can't maybe speak for every location, but you are kind of over a lot of those as well. But, just if you would, I want to start us off and just say, what are some of those initial ideas maybe you kind of started with and measuring, and you're like, maybe this isn't working? Because I think if we kind of lay some of that groundwork, some other future pastors and leaders that are listening, maybe they can learn from some of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think really, I don't know if you've heard the old term, what is it, nickels and noses?
Right. Yep.
I think most churches start there.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Butts and seats, basically.
Butts and seats. And, are you able to, are you able to pay the bills?
Right.
Are you able to make a difference in your community with outreach and your generosity and giving? And so, and which are good things. I mean, obviously healthy things grow.
Right.
And so, but I do think that the church is starting to really, really realize that, how many people show up on Sunday is an irrelevant number. Because really what we've learned is that in the context of our society now, with everything being so at your fingertips, and especially in this COVID season, where online church has been the main vehicle, what do we have to offer as the church? Well, we have great music, a powerful message, and a cool vibe. Well, you can get that at Starbucks. You can go to Starbucks, pop a Spotify worship list in, and then you can turn on any great pastor and listen to them, with a cup of coffee. Right. And so that's not the purpose. The purpose is community. The purpose is believers getting together and uniting their faith and seeking the presence of God together. And so that's the thing that's hard for people to tap into, and counting how many people are there. I think we thought that was how to measure the healthy things, but that's just a trailing indicator. I mean, having 1,000 people in your church is based off of what you've been doing 6 months prior to get those people there, but what's happening with those people. Right. And honestly, the average person goes to church once out of every 4 or 5 weeks. So, if you're counting how many people are there, it's just not an accurate number. And God doesn't count attendance. He entrusts, he sends. Right. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that we learned, is that for a long time, and I don't know if it was just because that's the easiest measurable, is, all right, how many people are coming? Oh, how many more people did you have this year than last year? Right.
Yeah. The goal is always one more, right?
It's always
give me 20, 30 more, whatever that was.
And look,
what kind of pressure,
numbers aren't,
does that...
it is. Well, we've talked about that. And I think, hey, here's the thing. Numbers are important because every number represents a name. Absolutely. And every name represents a story. But I think the way that we looked at it, it created pressure and insecurity in leaders and in pastors, because pastors spent more time looking over their shoulder to see how many people are in seats, right, than looking forward to what God had for them. And so I think we realized that counting how many people, even though that is a measurable, does not indicate health. Right. Yeah. Maybe it's just one number, right? Maybe it's one number.
It's an indicator.
It's one number.
Yeah. I found just talking from different pastors and be in that situation as well. And I'm sure it's with many pastors that it's almost like the attendance can be like a thermometer for how well you're doing. If the attendance is really high, you're feeling good, you're happy with your family and everything's going great. But then, it dips, 20, 30%. And you're like, I'm the worst person ever. God can't use me. I'm a failure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason probably why it's not good to just measure that, because would you find is it something you can really control, or is it,
No,
you know,
you can't.
yeah,
Yeah, you can't control. And so that's really where the health comes in. What are the things you can lead? What are the
right,
things you can really see in your church that help to indicate whether or not you're doing the right things, or whether or not your actual church is healthy. And honestly, those things are, we've talked about this before, Scott, and
yeah,
over coffee, but how many people are in your core? Like how
yeah.
many people are fully invested in the mission that God's called you
And
to?
so just describe for everyone that's listening, what is the core to you? What would you
Yeah.
describe as that?
Yeah, I think the core is people who are engaging in one, if not all, things the church offers to help people take next steps in their faith.
Okay.
So an example of that would be like giving. If you have a high percentage of people returning the tithe, that's showing that people are believing God, and they're going forth
Yeah.
with their faith in what God can do in the area of their finances, which means that they are healthy in that area, that they understand where their generosity goes, and they really do get what God can do. They're believing God for greater. Okay. People getting into small groups. Are they actually connecting in community outside of the four walls, in homes, breaking bread like the Acts church? Like, are they taking steps to build relationships and to take their understanding of scripture and of people to another level? And then serving on the dream team. I think a fourth one, even though you can't really measure it, is, are they inviting people? Are they going out into the highways and byways and having people come to them, whether it's to church or to their small group, or to go serve in the community, and so you look at those active things. Those are indicators of whether or not someone is actually growing and connecting and engaging. But that's half the battle. The other part of it is the intentional relationship with those people that are on your core to actually find out, are you reading your Bible? There's simple questions you can ask. Hey, what's the last thing God showed you?
Yeah.
What's the last revelation you got? Hey, what's God saying to you right now in this season?
Yeah.
Have you heard from him? Oh, you haven't? Oh, well, let's stop there. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Those are those intangible, kind of pastor points. And for everybody, like, it doesn't have to be just a pastor, right? Like, we're all called to be ministers.
That's
One
right.
of the things
That's
we've
right.
talked about in this podcast is that throughout the first 4 centuries, there began to be a slow drift and divide, like an artificial divide that was created between clergy and congregants, and that's not found in the Bible. And I think what I've seen with LifePoint do a great job of, like, no, we're empowering people, to get involved. Like, you have a ministry, you have, something that you get to do. Like, you don't have to, you get to do. And,
That's right.
So I think it's even, isn't it somebody leading a small group, or somebody even
That's
in
right.
a small group? Because it even needs to go back and forth, doesn't it? Like, maybe somebody in the small group can say to the small group leader, hey, how's it been going with you? Yeah.
That's right.
Like,
that's right. That's right.
Iron sharpens iron both ways.
That's right. And I agree 100%.
So
but
go ahead.
Yeah, but no, just like you said, it's that accountability, but it's that peer-to-peer. It's that, hey, we love each other enough to help each other grow. I think that's huge. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. So just a quick recap of what you said so far is, one of the things you measure is your core. These are the people that you consider very committed to the local church. They are acting out these kind of discipleship, principles in a way. Like, they are living out their faith, because you can believe Jesus died for your sins, but you're not really living out that faith. Like, it's transformed your life.
Yeah.
And so it's those people that are fully engaged. That's your core. And then outside of that, you're saying you measure 3 additional things: giving, serving, and in a small group.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's and you don't have to do all of those things. I
Right.
think it's just showing that, hey, I'm engaging in something. I'm taking a step. I think the other part of it too is people that have given their lives to Christ, they all have spiritual gifts. And so
Yeah.
what are you doing to utilize the gifts that God's given you, and
Right.
serving, and different things like that. So we're looking at that specifically, in regards to relationship. And then another measurement for us of health legitimately is the calendar of our team. Is your calendar full with people? Are there people on your calendar? Are you meeting with people? Are you having coffee with people? Are you sitting with people? If the calendar is empty, that's a good indicator that there might not be health in your church.
Yeah.
Because you're not helping people to grow. Therefore, if people aren't growing, the church can't grow.
Yeah. Yeah. What about, so you mentioned your calendar. I like that. I heard a pastor once say, in his calendar, he puts white space like on purpose, right? Because you can almost go the other end of it, and you kind of feel burned out, because you're like, I'm doing everything I can possibly do, except there's no Sabbath involved.
Yeah.
There's no rest time. And I think even taking that time of rest, whatever that is, building that into your schedule, taking vacations, dates with your wife, playing with your kids and stuff like that, is also a healthy thing to have for a lot of us that are very doing oriented, very high achievers that always want to do something, which is great. But then also part of doing is having that faith to say, I believe you, God, about taking some rest. I believe that's also seeking him, and also living for him.
Yep.
And
I think that's true. I agree. And I think that's, and here's what we've started putting in place with a lot, just to speak about rest. And I'll use date night as an example. Mm-hmm. Everyone that I lead, that is one of my questions when I sit with them. When's the last date night you went on?
Yeah.
When's your next vacation? How's your Sabbath going? What day is your Sabbath? Give me, what are the things that you're doing to make sure that you're living from rest and not to rest? And so, those are intangibles too. But if you're committed to ensuring that people are healthy, it becomes a regular rhythm in the conversations that you have with people.
Yeah. And it's also, it helps to set that culture too. The questions you ask are the things that are important to you.
That's right.
It's kind of the other end of the spectrum with, if a leader or just anybody at church, if all they're focusing on, hey, this is how many people are at church today, or this is how, whatever they're counting, that seems to be the most important to them. But maybe and as we've talked about, that shouldn't be. Like, it needs to be several measurements.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I like how you talked about, they have collective growth is one of the things you looked at, collective health with the whole church. You almost picture, you could look at like a bar graph of or a line chart of all the things that are going on, and it's giving has dropped in this area, but then small group participation, people are engaged in that way, and that has gone up. That's good. And you can kind of measure it collectively. But it would also hear you saying with that sort of individual growth, that's why you have to, I guess, build up leaders to kind of monitor some of this stuff and say, hey, this area has dropped, or maybe you haven't taken this next step. And I like that language, that idea of, hey, everyone kind of has that next step to take. And that's also, a measure of growth is that, or health is that you're growing. Like you're taking on a little bit more than you previously are, because to me, what I found and maybe you can speak to this too, is almost when you get caught up in doing the same thing over and over and over in routine, and even most people would say, man, things are going great, you're doing awesome, but you almost are on autopilot. You're almost like,
That's right.
God, I know you're there, but I'm not really begging for help anymore. Like there was a period of time, it was like, God, I need you for everything. And that part to me scares me when I get to that area where it's like, there's not another step I'm taking.
That's right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think if it starts with you, it starts with the leader. If you're not healthy, nothing can be healthy because you're not leading from a healthy place. And I think for us, that's why we ask a lot of those regular questions now. It's like, how's the health of your leaders? How's your health? Are you doing okay? Are you feeling okay? How's your time with God? What are you? And so the more that you're focused on being a healthy leader, the better it is most likely for those that are under your leadership, those that you're in a relationship with, because they're being led from a healthy place.
Right.
And it's much easier for them to find health when they're in that kind of an environment, and like you were saying before with intentionality of relationship, I think that's a huge deal. Like, I mean, how many people did you meet on Sunday, and how many people did you just tell that you were glad to see them? Like these are these intangible things, and you can have fun with it. I mean, legitimately, you can run reports for anything you want to know, right? But you can't run a report for how many handshakes you gave out, or how many actual conversations you had with people. And sometimes you can legitimately, it actually doesn't even matter at the end of the day what you place importance on, as long as everybody knows that it's the same, that there's a unified vision in it, and that's the win for the day. I think that's another thing that's kind of gotten in the way. Something that we've learned is that when no one knows what the scoreboard is, no one knows if they're winning.
Right.
And so it's like, we need to get everybody looking at the same scoreboard. Well, what is that today? You know what? Well, today it's, I want to meet 3 new families. Hey, every one of us, let's just meet 3 new people today. And not like to check off a box. Like, let's literally meet them. Let's set up coffee with them. Let's like get to know, we want to know their story because God created them and they have a story. And that's the scoreboard for today. And at the end of the day, let's share that. And you know what? If we all did it, I'd say, man, this was a healthy day.
Yeah, that's good.
This was a good day. And so you could even take it to the micro, of things, and just say, we're just going to measure one thing today. And I just think that sometimes that seems counterproductive because it's not the big number to measure, but it leads to the big number, Yeah.
So. Yeah. I really like that. That gives you the, that little achievable win, something that you can kind of measure to some degree, at least yourself. You're like, yeah, I know I was out there. I was doing whatever I was called to do. And that's something you can have it's those little successes. It's kind of like you're saying, it's that next step. There's always like little steps to get to that big step. And it's usually, you don't even realize you've gotten to that until you look back and you're like, oh, wow, look how much I've grown because I've done all these little things, even something as small. I've had the privilege recently to lead a new believer group where it's been so amazing just to see the small things that we basically take for granted. But it was in that environment that somebody was able to say, I kind of pray in my heart, but I've just never really had the boldness to pray out loud, but we created a space where it was like, we prayed a little bit and then sort of right at the end, we're like, okay, go ahead, just say whatever you want, and she was so excited that she was able to just talk out loud to God, be comfortable and to pray. And it's just those little successes and measurements along the way that, it's just baby steps, but they make up, big parts of people's lives.
That's right. And like you having that story is a great, so I would say it's just a great reflection and an indicator of the health of your new believer group, because you have a story. So, when I'm talking with a leader and I say, hey, share something that God's done in your team, in your group, on your camp, whatever it is, in your church, and you've got stories that come off the top like that, to me, that's a great indication that there's something healthy going on there.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's the countercultural thing. It's like, no, we didn't have some huge number of people join the dream team this week, which could be a thing that you're measuring that week. I mean, it could be, but we didn't have that. But I'll tell you what, we had this gentleman who's been addicted to drugs, who's tried to go to rehab 10 times and it just never took. But today he found hope in Jesus, and he said that the urge to take another hit left him today. I would say, well, there's obviously something healthy happening there, because God's presence has descended upon that place, and he's moving. So and that's not, again, like, that's not going to go on a report, but I think that sometimes it's like, let's just make sure that our reports look good, instead of, no, what is God actually doing amongst us? And if he's doing something amongst us, he's there, he's moving, he's working. Hey, let's go.
Because sometimes it's numerical growth, but it's always spiritual growth.
That's right.
It's always the individual growing and getting a little bit closer, a little bit more intimate with God. And then I like all your measurements, because it is that part of active faith. So much of kind of, for me anyway, growing up in the church, it was always, personal relationship with Jesus and, be close to him. And that was kind of it. And that's obviously important. You obviously have to have that, but there wasn't that way to even consider, okay, but what's the fruit of that? And where are you going? Where is he leading you to go beyond yourself, instead of just keeping, kind of have this religion box that you check, inside your heart, inside your mind. Okay, well, if there's real growth, eventually something pops out of the ground and there's some fruit where other people can see it. So I like all those measurements. And I think, and there's obviously some intangible ones, but there's a lot of things that you actually can measure collectively and individually.
Yeah. That's right.
Hey, this has been an awesome discussion, Ben. I appreciate it.
Man.
I just think, God's going to continue to do amazing things through you and through, and with your family, continue to grow together, and your family church. And then also, where he's going to continue to move you in greater areas of influence, because God's put a special plan on you. Absolutely. That, he's going to use you to continue to minister to other leaders, because he's put that clearly in you, that, to help leaders, but also pastor, pastor them, not just, hey, this is what to do because I know what I'm doing. But so I think a lot of people see that in you, and I'm excited to see where God continues to take you. And it's been a pleasure having you. And I just want to thank everyone else that's joined us. This has been an awesome discussion. If this has helped you, if this has been beneficial in any way, I just want to encourage you, go ahead and share this with somebody that might need some encouragement. Maybe they've been measuring the wrong things. Maybe they need some encouragement to take whatever that next step is. Maybe this could give them some hope to say, hey, there is something else. I can step out in faith and have that active faith. And I just want to encourage you, as always, as we say every week, to follow the command to always be prepared for action.